Welcome, friends. There's another edition of insights that I've had throughout my walk in life so that I can share it. Some might ring with you, some might not. Make sure to like, share, and follow. And if you like what you're hearing here, make sure to go and check it out at Patreon, become a member. This will all be transformed into either an audiobook or some sort of a memoir book for others to also be able to get these same insights. So we'll start off with the concept that if you truly enjoy life, you would not be lulled or become lazy of it. Every moment of your waking life, if you understood how beautiful, how wonderful it is, you would not have the sense of, I have to wake up in the morning with a groan, or I have to go through this. Unfortunately, most people go to a job, have a career, have bills to pay, and they're not actually living or doing what they want to do based on the system, society, and corruption that exists on this planet. But a true individual who is living their life to the fullest, they will not be lulled into such a state where they're not enjoying every moment of their existence. We have TV shows such as Westworld or a movie called Truman Show. What if the entire concept of the real world that we exist in, the entire reality of it, was such a Westworld reality? Now, in a TV show of that caliber, it shows that they were incapable of seeing which was real and which was not. Now, some individuals were aware of it, but they could not comprehend the fact. But the actual AI intelligence that was playing out the roles, they were unable to know if they were false realities or real realities, and they were acting as human as possible. Could the mind, as we are here today, conceive of the fact that everything and everyone around them is truly an artificial intelligence robot who is going about feeding off sloosh energy, feeding off the programming that is indoctrinated into the minds without seeing past whatever system that they're living through? It might not be that they're complete artificial intelligence, but the human mind itself, through fluoride, through trauma, through indoctrination, has some level of programming done to it that it is incapable of seeing past the structure that it was led into it. Now, we can't conceive such high-level technology, such high-level industry that has been investigated, or the vast amount of human effort that would be involved to do it. And one might ask, why would anyone even go through that effort? But it is the same thing that a farmer does to the farm animals. The farm animal probably doesn't understand free-range turkey, free-range chickens, free-range cows. It just assumes it's living its life on a pasture, eating grass, doing whatever it needs to. But in the larger scale of things, it is being coordinated, and there are boundaries to its existence. Now, with the amount of money, the amount of true technology that exists behind the scenes, in the Black Project books, the Area 51s, any other underground bases that all exist on this world, could it be conceivable that such a reality exists, that humankind, whether they be paid off, whether they unknowingly are involved in it, that they're all simply is moving about based on a programming, and the programming was slowly induced to them willingly or unknowingly in the back of their minds? And there is no critical thinking. Now, there's certain few individuals who are always outside the box, see the system for what it is. They themselves are incapable of fully seeing exactly how vast this system is and how entrenched they are in it, that they assume, or they are triggered, or they are influenced by the reactions, the trauma, the activities that these so-called, in current day, NPCs might manipulate. But once they see past that, some human beings are not really thinking, are not genuinely acting, but they're based their entire existence and reality based on programming, action, reaction, scenarios. And in that sense, one who has seen past that should not allow that sort of trauma, that sort of indoctrination to enter their essence. Because if it does, then they're playing along and they're reacting to actions the same way you would not take an artificial intelligence robot in the West world that does something as serious, part of the narrative, because in one's mind there is a human and there is a non-human, and there is a distinctive separation amongst those things. Once that separation has been made, does the influence that the non-humans have on that being alter? Does it change? And does one's action become more methodical, more informed because they do not do things that they assumed was part of life, reactions, formalities, habits that they assumed had to be taken place. But once they see that most of the people that are part of these patterns, most of these habits, they realize that most of these individuals are not living sentient beings, if you would. Does it stop being as important as it once was? Now, as I said, there is a 5D shift taking place, and there's many human beings that are on the rise, that are going into what would be called spirituality or called to God, or starting to ponder, critical think. The shift in collective consciousness is happening. When that rise takes place, there will always be things that the system sends about to distract you and to keep your attention caught on. Whether it be females, whether it be fame, whether it be power, whether it be the thing that you always wanted, during that raise, you have to make sure that these things are capable of coming to you, so you're always aware, you're always concentrating on it, and your energy is not sucked up, your energy is not usurped by the system offering what it needs or what it thinks you want, because it studied you so carefully that it knows exactly how to alter your guidance, alter your way. This has something to do with the hippie era, where there was a natural rise of consciousness, and the system at large knew that they can drug these folks that were having that rise of consciousness, altering them and putting them on a certain path that they wanted them to be on, so the next generation, the next outcome could be controlled by them in large. And this is how the system has always been operating. This is how it's always been going on. That is why it's good to understand that others have gone through the same stages. It has been going on for generations and generations, through era and era. And once you see through the trap, or once you're aware of it, obviously proper guidance, so-called teachers as they had back in the days, for those that were looking for inward search, know thyself, and going down that path, there were more teachers that were readily available. But these days it seems like most of those teachers, most of those awareness folks have been co-opted, corrupted, induced into propagating another lineage, another system break. So it's not very trustable. There's only one thing that you can fully put your trust on, that's inward search, your discernment, your insights, and God himself, who will always direct you, and all things happen for the betterment and for the goodness of God. Now, in the old storyline, the narrative, it is said that the Savior would come from the 12 tribes of Israel, and there were in fact the 12 tribes that were particularly inside Israel, and they were all broken up, and they were spread around all around the world. It is said that in the second coming, the 1,000-year reign, that Israel will be formed again, the original council, the original 12 tribes, and it will come from the pride or the clan of Judah. But since the 12 tribes originally in that small section of Israel has dispersed, and they have gone all throughout the world, lineage mixing, culture mixing, and all forms of history has been altered, it is no longer just the specific 12 tribes of Israel, but the entire world has now become the 12 tribes of Israel in its essence, on a greater scale, on a more wider understanding and concept. But as Jesus Christ came in and canceled out the concept of Gentile and Jew, there is no separation now. So all beings are involved in that family, in that kingdom of God. Some individuals would still prefer it if there was a separation because of their uniqueness. They want to feel special, they want to feel above others. But there have always been human beings that thought that way, that they wanted to be unique, they wanted to be special, they deserved power, they deserved to rule. Those individuals usually never are rightfully heired to the throne, because God, the almighty knowing, the all-knowing presence, would never allow someone that truly seeked power, that truly seeked to control people, to ever achieve and keep that throne. Because in the end, that level of wanting, that level of conniving usually corrupts humanity and usually corrupts the lineage state of mankind. So in that sense, we have to understand the 12 tribes, the so-called famed story, the lineage, the prophecies, they've all been split across all of humanity and anyone that adopts themselves into this family. Now, if you do not believe in the Bible story, God story, Jesus story, you have to think about it as a narrative, as a fairy tale, as a story. Humankind, mankind, the essence needed an heir, needed a throne. It had a fairy tale ending, and that ending needs a king, a ruler. It needs a rightful way to live. It needs a rightful way to operate, and that operation is taking place as we're observing right now. And also in this current stage of awareness, as it happens every single time that mankind has its rise, most times the Western folks that are going on that rise, they have this idea, this concept that in India, that in the East, there is some sort of magical presence there, some sort of magical, esoteric, or spiritual enlightenment that isn't found in the Western world. Now, there is some small sense to that the Western world is mainly capitalistic, it's mainly toward individualism, and there isn't that many levels of knowledge, awareness, and mainly it's a sort of corporate level of spirituality. And in the Indian world, the Eastern world, the Buddha world, there is some sort of establishment set of monasteries, people that can get together and get into communes like they have in California. But there is this underlying idea that in the Eastern world, there is a special energy there that is more spiritual than there is in the Western world, and this is a false reality. When the Westerners, the Europeaners, their old monarchy invaded India as the so-called Queen Elizabeth line, the UK kingdom, when they invaded there, they killed off and they corrupted and they took anything spiritual, anything pure out of that area. The same way any invading force, any kingdom that goes into another land, they have to make sure to destroy the history. They have to make sure to destroy anything that they have a complete structure to, so that they can change that nation towards what they want. In the old days, when they went to invade them, they said, we have to destroy these people's spirituality or change their education or make them forget their value, because their spirits are so high, they're so connected, that it's incapable of completely destroying and defeating them. And that is what they did. They changed their education system. They corrupted, wiped out anything that was pure, eccentric, what you would call spiritual or religion or old ancient knowledge that was in that era. And because they destroyed all that information, now it is just a corrupted secret society version of it. And whenever people go over there to get that spirituality, they're all simply is getting the corrupted version of that spirituality, not the pure essence. There's still the proper setup, the environment, the taking care of situation that's there, that I think is coming over to the West, especially in more scenarios like California, where they understand there's more spirituality, people are being in tune with that essence. So there might be more monasteries, more get-togethers, especially they're building this whole communism pod style of living, which is not so great, but it is some sort of essence towards that area. But it is the underlying idea, the underlying concept that in the Eastern world there is something magical, there is something spiritual more than there is in the Western world, is already a trap. You're still stuck in narrative-based, structural-based awakening. The awakening happens inwardly. You must detach yourself spiritually and energetically and diet-wise. It is helpful to get away from all this corrupting essence, different thought patterns. And in India, there is an essence, there is an understanding from back in the old ancient days, not so much now, that when someone goes on that rise, they cut off from the family, they cut off from their business, they cut off from everything, and they go off and they try to learn, they try to grow. Obviously, that doesn't happen in the Western world, because it would be seen as strange, it would be seen as odd, because they don't see spirituality, they don't see essence in that same light. But it might seem like with the more immigration or mass immigration and different mindsets and different spiritualities coming along, people might be changing their mind, people might be more used to such things, and it will need to happen because this new energy that's coming in, especially with immigration and new mindsets and concepts, all this altered humanity and consciousness does affect the host nation, does affect how things are taking effect. So these kind of things must be invented on an industry level or a societal level, so that people do not lose their minds, especially with the high level of suicide, high level of drug abuse and all these things. People are unhappy, people are not connected with source, and this is being done on purpose, because when you disconnect a population, when you disconnect an individual from source, from God, from their true essence, and fully connect to 20-floor high-rises, constant fluoride, constant chemicals, sugar, 5G technology, Wi-Fi in every home, this does affect the human mind, and it's being geoengineered completely and bodily to become a completely different being. And on a last note, the essence of human consciousness, once you understand it is all one collective thing, you understand when there is suffering, even in one individual, then it affects the whole entire river that we live inside. So when we want to torture someone, when we put someone in jail, when we allow certain groups of human beings to suffer, every individual on some level gets affected by that. Even if there's a mass amount of river that's running through, if someone was to pollute it in a small area or take a piss inside it, that piss nutrients, that piss essence is still corrupting that entire river. Much later on down the river, it might not be as connected, as polluted, but the essence is still there. In that same sense, every human being is connected to that collective consciousness, is connected to the greater essence. And when you have one individual that's suffering, that's going through trauma, that's either sad, that's angry, that's tortured, that's traumatized, this does affect each individual. That's why it doesn't make sense to want to torture people in order to put them in prison, in order to make sure we get revenge by putting jail sentences of 50 years, 10 years, 20 years, and we assume this is somehow getting payback for the crime they've committed, when in reality all we want to know is that that person has been rehabilitated, they've changed their ways, they want to do things for society and better themselves and better everything as a whole. This should be the ultimate goal of human society, human so-called punishment or fixing or counseling, rather than throwing people in jail for 50, 60 years, assuming that we're getting something out of it, rather than treating someone like an animal. Now, we can assume we've put this person inside a prison, so we aren't ever affected by it anymore. They're away from us. But in reality, what's happening is that individual's suffering, that individual's torture is polluting the human consciousness, the river, if you will, of humanity. And that river does affect even the most people that are in their protected veils, in their protected border-filled societies, gated communities, and we have happiness, we have all the things taken care of, our food, our security, our internet, our TV. Even those that are fully well off, our consciousness, our happiness, our essence is still affected by that one individual that's somewhere across the world who was tortured. Now, obviously, there's different groups. In the subgroup section, there might be the Eastern consciousness, the Western consciousness, then there's a subgroup of nations, then there's a subgroup of family, then there's a subgroup of individual. But in the full true essence of it, it is all one collective consciousness, it is all one collective being. And once that is understood on a personal individualist level, then it's not that you go out there and you want to help people. You don't go out there saying this is what I must do, but it is something that happens naturally, because that is the only thing that we feel natural that we must do, because there's no other way of living other than that. And on that note, folks, I'm going to end this video off here. Make sure to like, share, because it's heavily being censored. Follow all the other social media sites, and love thy neighbor.